New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert over here.
Reverend Z right here.
And this is New Thought today for July 27th, 2021. Welcome. It's Tuesday here on the New Thought Media Network, and every Tuesday about 2 o'clock we get together and chat about what's going on in New Thought. It's good to be with you again, Z.
Yes, sir. Good day, good day.
And today, folks, we're looking at a science of religion and a religion of science. Now, one of the things I want you to remember, we're getting this information from the what is the old extended home study course, originally by Ernest Holmes and now available as a reprint through the Science of Mind archives. And we put that link up in the comment box for you there. Sometimes there's a little something going wrong with that. Looks like maybe it's taken enough. We'll make sure you get an opportunity to get that link so you can follow along with us. And this week, what we're doing is we're starting on page about 29, the science of religion and a religion of science. So, Z, you picked this one again this week. Why don't you kick us off and get us started? Share a little bit with everybody where we're going today.
Sure. I think, Ernest developed religious science, which speaks to just that. It speaks to that the way we go about and organize ourselves, our lives, and our understanding of the world is this interrelated, integral aspect of life, and trying to better understand who we are, where we come from, and why we're here. And so, from a religious science standpoint, Ernest says this. He says there are three channels through which knowledge comes to us: science, philosophy, and religion. And by science, he means the organized knowledge of the natural laws and how they get applied. So that's the science, the laws and how we apply them. Then the philosophy is in relationship to those statements, or in relationship to the opinions we have and hold about life and reality, and how those things, i.e. the law, may interact with that. And then by religion, we speaking of this whole idea of man's belief about our relationship to this invisible, intelligent entity, call it by many names, and beginning to figure out how they all mesh together. And so Ernest's idea was, by looking at life in these three different ways, we begin to get a working knowledge of what life is, how do we operate within it, and how do we utilize the laws and be successful in what we do. No sound.
There we are. So it's the theory and the application. Now, what you've just explained, I love Holmes's his neat definition of it. Religious science is a correlation of the laws of science, opinions of philosophy, and revelations of religion applied to human needs and aspirations. And really what you just said, right? We're looking at these three different aspects, and they each bring something to the equation. It wouldn't be the same if we were doing this just based on opinions of philosophy and revelations of religion.
Right. Because he says both of those are opinions, right?
Right.
The thing that really is the law.
Yes. One and only. And in many ways, when we think of the law, when I do, what I have to think about is it's really that unchanging aspect. The law fulfills the promise. The law is the fulfillment of the creative process. what we send into the law must be demonstrated, must manifest. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to manifest or demonstrate exactly according to my vision of it, or what I think should happen, or what I think must happen.
Right.
But it is going to demonstrate in a way that's in alignment with, here's our natural order in the natural laws of life again. Right.
Yeah. And so, that leads to this whole idea of pure science and applied science. Right. So pure science deals with the principle. Right. And the applied science is, how do I take this principle? My favorite one is the principle of electricity. And how do I apply it? Thermal, hydro, solar, those are the different applications. And so when Ernest Holmes speaks to this whole thing about religious science, is the idea that we look at our opinions in the revelations of philosophy and sacred encounters, and then how do we set those upon the principles and applied laws that are found when I'm observing something, or when I expounding on this sacred knowledge that has come to me or to someone, and apply it. How first set it up against a principle to see if it, like a mathematical proof, see if it holds true. And if it holds true, now let me try and apply it to see if it works. And once I get those two together, there is an infallible action or set of actions that will guarantee a specific outcome.
Yes. And it's absolutely repeatable.
Absolutely repeatable.
When I first walked into this philosophy, into this movement, that's one of the things that caught me was, okay, if this works for one, then it's got to work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we absolutely teach that what is working, the power of creation, the power of consciousness is working for one, but working through and for all equally. So we come to this point where I come in the door of this and I'm like, let's study religions. Let's look at various religions across time, across the spectrum, and let's use this formula of religion and philosophy, and let's use this and our religion, philosophy, and science, and let's use these together to say what makes sense, what's working, what's moving human consciousness forward, and what maybe is holding us back.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
And I don't want to use that to make any of these other religions wrong. But what I'm doing is creating really my own personal religion of what's going to work for me, or work in collaboration with the communities that I'm in.
Yes. Because ultimately what we're looking at, or what we're looking for, is results. At the end of the day, we want to have results, and I want to be able to repeat that thing that gave me the desired results. And so we know, again, using that whole thing of electricity, I can set up a circuit to accept the electricity, and then there's a plus or minus on the applying of that if I apply too much energy to this light bulb, it'll blow. If I don't apply enough energy to it, it'll just sit dormant. And so there's a sweet spot or range where I can work within. So it's precise, but it's not. It doesn't have to be on the exact perfect timing or perfect spot every time. It will give you some variation in the results, but the results within the tolerance will always be the same.
Yes. There we go. The results within the tolerance will always be the same. If I move outside the tolerances, if I move into a whole different aspect of an experiment, we're going to end up with different results.
Yes. Well, and a prime example of that is, I always hear this. You think about the guy or the person who, and it was a guy who created the sticky notes, the Post-it notes. He was looking to create some other kind of adhesive. I think he was working with 3M, and he created this thing, and he said, oh, wow. He came up with a whole new application of this adhesive, if you will, that he was trying to make that was within the broad spectrum of the law, but then it wasn't within the tolerance of what he wanted. So he got something totally different, but was still in the spectrum of the principle of adhesiveness.
Yes. Yes, within the principles of adhesiveness. I like that. And the other really interesting part in all that I always found was that was a mistake, right? At first, all his colleagues thought, I just throw it away. It's just worthless. But the end result was, no, there's something wholly new nobody's thought of. Well, let's look at this from a different perspective.
Yeah.
What else could be?
And they made lots of moolah as a result of that mistake.
Yes. lots of moolah. Okay. So our number one principle really is we have to look at life, all aspects of it. Our spiritual life, our faith, our work life, our financial life, our relationships, all of it from a perspective of the scientific process that evaluates what's working, beneficial, and again, repeatable.
Right.
Those are the big ones.
And isn't that what everyone is looking for? Everyone is looking for a set of steps or a set of things that can be done that produces a repeatable results in our relationship to the intelligence of the universe and to our fellow man or woman. Yes. And so this whole idea of approaching religious or religious science is how do we begin to incorporate the repeatable information of science, correlate it with the opinions of philosophy and or religious sacred texts or sacred events.
Yep.
So that when I pray, for example, that I get a result.
Yes. And we get the result that is not, and here's the fun part, right? Because we're going to get results no matter what. Whether we get the results we want or not, well, that takes some skill. That takes some practice. That takes time. And just like any good scientist, my early experiments may not be up to snuff, maybe outside the standards, maybe outside the controls. And I may have to reevaluate, and you'll hear me say this again and again, right? Coming back to what's going to work for me to be in alignment with the law.
Yeah.
Right? What's it going to take for me to be in alignment with nature?
And I think and a linchpin in that is the person who's acting as this religious scientist or a scientist, period, has to buy into and acknowledge and accept that there is consciousness in the universe that we have to tap into at a universal level, spiritual level, scientific level, however you want to frame it. Because once we do that, now we have access to it. It's like having a drill or a saw and then having electricity to run that, but you never connect them together. So they're both present at all times. The saw is always there. The electricity is always there. But if I never connect the two, I can never begin to explore the different principles or the different ways of using that saw or that drill to create something within the realm of the thing itself, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thus, life becomes one great experiment. And it's
Exactly.
up to us to learn how to plug in to these universal principles.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about right after the break. Folks, you're watching A New Thought Today. If you're with us live, thank you very much. If you're watching on a replay at another time, well, thank you for that as well. We appreciate you being with us. I'm Rev BRZ. My co-host Rev Z and I are here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, where we spend an hour chatting about what's going on in New Thought philosophy, where we believe it's going in the world. And this week, we're in a process where the last couple of weeks, and probably going forward a little bit here too, we've been working with the what is not New Thought, but is actually pretty old standard New Thought. It's the Ernest Holmes Home Extension course. We've dropped a link in the description and in the comments, so you can catch that there and follow along with us if you like. And this week we're looking at a science of religion and a religion of science. So, all right, Z. So what I keep hearing is life's the experiment. We've got to go out and prove these principles. We've got to prove these practices. And I think the most important person to do that with is to prove them to ourselves first, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, most definitely. I mean, that's one of Ernest's most famous quotes is, don't take my word for it. Go out and practice and learn and learn the approval, if you will, of these ideas in the laboratory of your own life.
Right.
Because each one of us represents a different tolerance, right? You take a small person like me and a bigger person like Robert, our experiment with lifting weights will be the same in terms of how we do it, but the results are going to be different. Robert is probably going to be able to lift more weight than I, just because of the size of the body. So, but to understand that, and there may be cases where that may not be true, but we have to go out and experiment with that. Right. Which, I was watching the Olympics weightlifting the other day, and it was amazing. And how much weight some of these smaller people were lifting. I was like, holy cow. But again, they had to go out and experiment. They started at one weight and they worked on certain muscle group, bone structures, whatever, alignment, and they did it. Yep. And then they figured out where they go and where they stop.
And that's the application, right, folks? I may have a few pounds on you when we're both just sitting here, middle-aged guys. But if you start applying and you start working and you start lifting and you start bulking out, you're going to be bigger, stronger, and overall in a better shape than I am. If I'm just sitting here going, yeah, I know it's possible.
Right.
Yeah, I get this. Yeah, I studied that stuff back in the 70s. It's okay. I understand it all. I'm just going to visualize myself. Right. We got to get out and do the work, folks. You hear us say that every week, I think. Yes. And part of that is figuring out what is ours. We can't do all the world needs, but the world does need all that we can do. Thank you, Janice Stanfield, for that line. We can't do all that the world needs, but the world does need all that we can do. And Holmes, he alludes to that in several places throughout there. And somewhere along the lines, it seems like New Thought lost that piece. It seems like we have kind of, I guess I would have to say it. It appears some seem lazy. I know I have been at times, and I know I've watched others, that it can be real easy to sit and do our work in consciousness and think that's enough.
Right. Right.
Yeah, or, oh, well, I sent my tithe check this month, so that's enough.
Right.
Or, well, I ushered last month, so I don't need to send a tithe check. That was enough.
Because you understand, right? We always hear the law is working whether you know it works or not, right? So there is a intelligence, if you will. There's intelligence all over the universe, but then there's an intelligence within the law that establishes it to do what it's going to do, whether you are conscious of it or not. And so you could almost say it has its own program running, right? A good example is gravity. Whether you understand the principle of gravity at a pure science level or at an application level, you get on a building and jump off, gravity will begin to do what it does, bring you to the ground. And so it's the same thing in terms of religion and how we apply it and how we use it and develop our faith and our prayers, and all of that is understanding that these laws are themselves made out of the intelligence of the universe.
Right.
And so they don't contradict themselves. You can use one to help achieve something different or supersede something per se for a amount of time when certain other laws are put in place. Ideally, or an example of that is the law of gravity and the law of aerodynamics. They're two laws, they exist. You can supersede the law of gravity as long as you hold the law of aerodynamics, speed, and all of that, wind draft. Once you start dropping one of those principles or the components of that principle of aerodynamics, you're going to get a different result.
Right. I am always fascinated in the unique and amazing ways that people all across this planet are using all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And many towards, our, what we always profess, right? Z is towards the good, toward the nature arcs, towards the long arc of nature is towards the good. There are people on this planet, however, and I think we can both point to quite a few that we know personally, that seem to be misusing the law and taking this to a different extreme. And that too has to be part of the oneness and the perfection of it all, folks. We have to realize that even though I may not approve or my humanness may not agree with something that's going on or that you're doing, it really, I got to get me out of it, because at the level of the divine, if it's happening, it's got to be happening for a reason.
Right. And because the law is impersonal, the law doesn't really care.
Right.
It doesn't care whether I'm rich, poor, young or old. If I get on my house and jump off, gravity is going to deal with me the way it deals with anybody else who does that exact same thing.
Right.
And so from that perspective, we know when we start talking about the scientific aspects of religion or religious science, it goes to, in my mind, it points out this whole idea of all the things we talk about in spirituality, of unity and oneness and brother taking care of brother and sister taking care of sister, are all achievable things. As we talk about this world that works for everyone, where everybody is given the opportunity to operate from their own magnificence, is there. We have to learn the laws and how to apply them and how to integrate them into our lives. And those things that we envision will become easy as pie, as they say.
Pie in the sky. Pie in the sky. But see, and okay, I like how you get to that. But I want to remind everybody, this is not just a pie in the sky.
Yeah.
This is, and what we've been talking about here. And if you're just joining us, folks, welcome aboard. New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. Reverend Z and I have been talking about a science of religion and a religion of science. And really at this point, we're at that place of, okay, if we treat our religious life, our spiritual life, our metaphysical life, if we look at that through the lens of a scientific process or a scientific perspective, we are constantly in that experimental phase of making a hypothesis, creating the conditions to prove or disprove that hypothesis, and then using that information to do something new.
Right.
I like to look at it from this idea. You're out in the world, and an event happens.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Somebody drops a bottle of ketchup next to you in the supermarket. Whatever it might be. You're out in the world, and an event happens. Now, you ultimately have the absolute choice. You have the choice to determine the meaning of this, to make up a story about this. Do you want to make up a story that's going to support you in what you're doing? Or do you want to make up a story that's not going to support you in what you're doing, that's going to hurt you or hold you back? So we have an event, which leads us to the experience. That's what we define it. The event leads us to the experience. Now that we've had this experience, we have the opportunity. The opportunity, again, to use this to our benefit, or to allow this to be a hindrance, a blockage, a hurdle, a suffering that's going to keep us away from our good.
Yeah. And the thing that gets sparked in me when you say that is, when we start talking about science, a lot of people want to pull away because they say, oh, it's cold. It has no feelings, no emotions. And that's absolutely not true. It may look that way if you're looking at them as one-offs. But when you begin to understand how they work together, and that when an event happens, it's a combination of two or more laws, then we can begin to say there is like part of the principle of starting a fire means you got to have dry wood. If you got wet wood, you're going to be out there for a long time trying to get that fire started. And that's wet wood either by the limb just being cut from a live tree, or wet from rain, right? Or from water. And so we begin to understand that there are feelings and emotions, if you will, may not be the right term, but to get the sentiment across, within these universal principles and laws, i.e., pure science and applied science, pure science being the principle, applied science being the law, we begin to create a life, a understanding, a way of thinking that begins to bring in aspects of other laws and principles that we may not even be aware of. An example of that would be a forest fire, which, right now we got tons of those around the country. So we pray that people are safe. But we know, and firefighters will tell you, that when a fire starts of that size and that magnitude, it has the ability to create its own weather patterns just by the fire, which means now the fire has started looking at wind, the laws of wind or in altitude, and all kinds of stuff are baked into this intelligence that understands when certain conditions are present. I don't care how they come present, the results will happen.
Right. Exactly. You remind me, I saw a story somewhere here in Colorado. A woman left a potted plant out on her patio. It's a new development. There's no shade. They don't know how, but the potted plant exploded and they called it spontaneous combustion. All the conditions. Now, we don't know what all those conditions needed to be. We don't know exactly how hot it needed to be. If there was just a little too much nitrogen in the soil mixture that was used at the factory where she bought the plant, we don't know what all those conditions were. But we do know that all those conditions were met by the result that we have.
Right.
It helps to have an idea where we're going, what the result is going to be. And for me, this is where we start to, in our conversation here, I start to feel that bend away from, okay, now I think we understand that there's a science to our religious experience, to our spiritual life. Now, how do we bring a sense of our sacredness, our religion, our spirituality into this scientific process, if you will? We're going to flip this thing back over on itself and create something new. And for many years, when I first got into this, I would tell people all the time, there is nothing in the world to be religious about except your own spirituality. And I suggest you be very religious about your own spirituality. So this isn't us saying that you have to do this or you have to do that. We're here to discover. Now, in our reading on page 31 of the information we're using today, Ernest Holmes writes this: we might speak of pure religious science we might speak of pure religious science as we would speak of a pure natural science, which means the study of natural causes. We might speak of pure religious science as that branch of science which studies the nature of the divine principle, the nature of mind and consciousness. Then we would think of applied religious science as the application of this divine principle to human needs for practical purposes. And this is where the religious scientist, in implying this principle, would study the nature of prayer, of faith, and of mental actions and reactions. And that's what we're doing. We're using this experience we've now created to study the nature of prayer, faith, and mental action or reaction.
Right.
I had a great talk today with somebody about, if something's going on in the world and you're feeling pretty triggered about it, good. Because that's your trigger. You installed it. I can't do anything about it. And only you can turn that trigger off. Right. But it might take me or somebody to let you know that trigger even exists. Right. To help you wake up to the fact it's there.
Right. And that's the same thing with the laws, right? It takes certain events to happen or certain things to happen for you to even begin to understand or even realize that there's a law that governs that, right? And so when we begin to talk about religious science or science of religion, we're talking in this broad sense that there are many different systems. Like we talked earlier about the different ways of getting electricity, solar, thermal, hydro. We could put that parallel, if you will, in terms of religious systems, right? Whether it's Christianity or religious science or Buddhism or Islam, they're all looking at how do I take these laws to create this applied method of achieving a results, right? And so the idea we've all heard about one mountain, many paths, or one journey, many paths, which means that we can take these laws and put them together or experiment with them or find ourselves in a condition that allows certain things to happen. So, the way I get turbo electricity, it's quite different from thermal electricity or fossil fuel or solar. All of them are valid. Neither one is more or less correct than the other. It just uses different aspects of the laws.
Yep, exactly. All right, folks, we know how much fun this can be. And we also know that there are times where it can be a little like, did I just get that? Could he say that again? And the answer is maybe. Right. All you got to do is let us know. Be sure, comment, drop a comment in the comment box. Even if you're watching this on the replay, let us know. If you have comments, questions, complaints, moans, groans, gripes, drop them in the comment box. Let us know. If you're watching this on a replay, we will do our very best to get back to you as soon as we can. And answer those questions or acknowledge your involvement. Because really, right, this whole program is all about opening ourselves to another way of looking at it. Right. And another way of saying, okay, maybe I've heard this before, but today I'm hearing it in a different analogy, in a little different voice, in a little different way. Maybe I have heard this and I don't fully understand it, and I'm wondering how to rectify or justify or align something with another, or correlate something with another belief pattern. And that's what we're here for. And we're happy to support you in that exploration. Now, you can reach out to us at ministertalk@ntmedia.org. That's ministertalk@ntmedia.org. And we'll make sure that we get back to you. There it is. There's the banner. And we'll make sure that we get back to you on these things and work together to explore these conversations, because really, I think, well, in my opinion, Z, there's no better time than the present to really start activating these things in the world.
No doubt.
That there's the old Zen saying, the best time to plant a tree is today. The second best time was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, this philosophy has been around for a lot longer than that. And there is still never a better time than today to be a part of what's going on. When I first got into this philosophy, you would hear people say, "Oh, we need to become the we're the best kept secret at We're the best kept." No, we need to not be a secret. Here's the truth, folks. We're not a secret. This philosophy is not hidden in the shadows or behind the veil of some pretend mysticism. It's out in the open. It's in our lives. It's in our teachings. It's in our media. It's in our music. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm committed to bringing it forward even more every day I possibly can. Every day. And I know you are as well, Z. So where do we take this now?
Well, there's a statement on page 32 of the work that Ernest presented that reads like this. I think it's brilliant. I think this is where we have to go. It says, a religious scientist believes with Robert Browning that all's love, yet all's law. He believes in an impersonal law as well as a personal relationship to the spirit. And he must believe that this law exists for all, like the laws of mathematics or any other natural law. But that this personal relationship is personified through each at the level of his consciousness, at the level of his comprehension of what God means to that person, to him or her. In a scientific religion, superstition and dogma find no place. They must be discarded. So, short and simple, life is not a cookie cutter. There is no one size fits all in life. And that the way you figure that out, there's a science of measuring your feet, how long it is, how wide it is, to figure out what kind of shoe you should get or what your size is. And so there's no dogma about it. Everybody's going to get this one size. And that's how we have to approach life, because that is what life is. And when we can do that and understand that and apply that, we have success, which is obviously, defined differently by different people, places, and circumstances.
Yes. I love that you brought that up, because he continues on that next paragraph. Intelligence and reason must be the rule of thought. Hey, if it just sounds and feels unreasonable, then it is. Right? It's pretty simple sometimes. Intelligence and reason must be the rule of thought, and God must be now, and that principle, the allness, the oneness.
Yes.
And must be accessible to all on equal terms.
Yes.
The scientific human cannot believe in special revelations nor in special dispensations of providence. We all have access to this power equally and alike. No one is more special. No one is more capable. Some are more practiced. Some have invested more of their time and their talent and their efforts into practicing, improving, and perfecting their own approach to these principles. But no one has a special dispensation. No one is holier than anyone else in any of this.
No, there's no dispensation, especially because no matter who the person is, what they claim, whatever, if we all stick our hand in fire or we all jump off the building, gravity is going to bring all of us down. There's no special dispensation for me because I say ABC. Jump off the building, gravity will bring me down. And that's how we have to begin to look at things when we see people who are achieving things or who are successful or prayer is working for them. We don't look at them with disgust or envy or jealousy. We try to understand what is it that they know or what is it that they're doing and applying that I'm not. Because we know the law is impersonal. It does not care who plugs in the saw or the drill. You plug it in, it's going to work if it's a good working drill.
Yep. Or what you had for breakfast or who you slept with last night. The law just is.
Yep.
And it does.
And that's why we look at this whole topic of a science of religion and a religion of science. Because, you know, the whole way that science is applied, studied, and applied is a religion. There's an emotional and there is a philosophical way of going about science, about sending rockets to the moon or discovering what new atoms or protons or neutrons or whatever they're looking at works, what caused them to be, and they go about it with a passion.
Right.
And that's what we're looking for, living our lives that way.
Yes. And that's what this ministry is looking for, right? That's what New Thought Media Network is all about and is looking for is for to be in spiritual community with people that are passionate about this philosophy, passionate about creating a world that works for everyone, passionate about supporting humanity and awakening to their spiritual magnificence. Whatever terms, whatever words we want to use about it, what we're about is all that. So, you know, shameless pitch, come join us. Let us know how you want to be a part, how you'd like to play and how you'd like to demonstrate this vision. Because, and well beyond just this ministry and New Thought Media Network, right? The vision that you hold right now is absolutely vital, we believe, to the evolution of human consciousness and therefore our experience on the planet. When it's in alignment with the law, with universal principles, with these principles of nature that are towards growth and happiness and prosperity, not when we use these principles towards greed or separation or avarice or any of the other aspects that just draw us down that path of separation. Before we run too far out of time, I want to jump over onto page 33 here, and there's a couple paragraphs that I think really do start to put a nice bow on all of this section for us here, Z. I love to explore them with you. On page 33, the third paragraph says, the philosophy of religious science, then. So this is a philosophy. The philosophy of religious science consists in the belief, the opinion, or the certainty that God as man, in man, is man. You guys follow that? And then when the human makes a proclamation, it is still God proclaiming. There is no separation between your word and God's word. There's no difference between God's plan and your plan. Your plan is God's plan. Mm-hmm. God's plan is for you to have your plan and to work your plan. But now, and then it makes no proclamation. It is still God proclaiming. But now, at the level of man's consciousness, at our humanness, God can only express through us what we can allow. If I can't believe it, if I can't embrace it, if I can't accept it, if I can't envision ourselves and myself in that place, then this all oneness, this divine God cannot manifest through me to that degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just, you know, if we deal with this whole idea of there's one consciousness, there's one intelligence that was invisible, and that everything that was made from it, whether it's seen or unseen. And we have in science shown how if the right gases and things are together, they can create a physical presence of things. That's just a sample. You don't really, you know, but when you can buy that, when you can understand that, when you can see how it gets applied, you can understand how God as man, in man, is man. Because there's only one thing operating here. There's only one thing working, and that is the intelligence and creative power of the divine. And so when we buy that, when we understand that, when we can apply that, there's no big or small in the eyes of God. Because when I align a small power with the larger power behind it, that thing that seems small now becomes bigger and endless because it's backed up by something greater than itself.
Yes. Folks, if you're following along, we just dropped a link into the chat box. Let you know where you can pick up the text that we're working from at this point in time in our discussions. And this is New Thought Today. It's with us. It's here every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Rev BRZ and I get together here and confab about the future and the current state of New Thought. And oftentimes we use the history of New Thought to look at and to set the stage for how we can explore these contemporary applications. And I believe that's probably the biggest piece that we want to come away with every week is yeah, we get an idea how this happens, but what's the contemporary application for it? Today, I want to set this up also on page 33 by this next little piece. Religious science rightly argues that if there is an infinite creative intelligence, which makes things out of itself, by itself, becoming the thing that it makes, and if the human exists and is conscious, then the creative genius of the universal mind is also the creative genius of its individualization, yes, which we call us.
Yes.
You.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And you know, it's been said like in a biblical term, it was that in the beginning was the word, and then the word took on flesh. Right? Yes. Same principle, same concept in a little more flowery way, but that is the essence of what it's saying here. That there's this one intelligence, there's this thing that is not bound by anything, but can be contained and utilized by all things, and is utilized and created by all things. And so in religious science, we begin to understand, and we speak from that perspective that says this: religious science does not belong to any sect or to any group or any class or anything of a sort, or to any one person, which is what we were talking about before. It lays no claim to special revelation, but does announce that that in its particular system of thought, there have been different people, communities throughout the ages who have applied this from all philosophies and religions and come up with a understanding that life is a give and take and understanding of who and what we are in relationship to God, and we can use it and we can deliver.
Yeah. And the final words on that paragraph: deliver a message of freedom. Right? I love that, because I'm reminded of the quote Reverend Dr. David Alexander shared with us the one day, right? We practice a radical personal liberation theology. It's all about personal freedom. Yeah. And and we call that New Thought. And the point behind that is that we're working to support people in setting themselves free of the mental challenges so we can create a new mental construct that is of a world that works for everyone, that is of a mental image, a mental construct of a world that works for you and for me and for everyone everywhere. Now, there are those that would argue, well, that's already happening. It's only happening, at the level of people's belief. Yes. And yes, and yes. And I want to be more active about that. I want to be more out in the world about that. I want to invite all of us to be more out in the world about this. And whether that's, I run into people all the time that still want to say, well, what if my job is just to pray? That's fine. Go ahead and pray. But you're not going to find a lot of inspiration here, because we want to work with people that want to get out into the world and want to start doing some things and really putting these principles into action.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think when that happens, we begin to see that what life is about. That's what love is. That's what the all is. Even though it may sometimes appear to be different, that within this allness, this love, this intelligent connection, there's harmony, there's peace, there's joy, there's freedom, there's wisdom, there's all these things that when put together in the proper space, in the proper relationship, they work and create beautiful things that help everybody. It's like having a great big box of Legos. And from that box of Legos, you can make all kinds of things. And the relationship creates a loving expression of the allness of those Legos. And that's what we're looking for. We like little Lego pieces trying to create some harmony to create this grand presentation of what life is and can be and is if we allow everything to work in harmony and freedom and ultimately love.
Harmony, love, freedom. Yeah, that sounds like a good combination to me, for sure, right? And again, folks, if we're looking at this from a perspective of what's relevant today, love. Love unconditionally. Love those around us. Love those we don't understand. Love those we can't begin to comprehend. But love.
Yeah.
I think that's a central theme to all religion. So if we're looking at religion through a scientific lens, love is still there. And therefore, to me, that means love really is the religion of science. And if we can love what's going on, if we can be in that place of absolute unconditional giddiness, yeah, cool, whatever it is, then I think that we have the opportunity to step into a new way of being. And we're activating that new consciousness on the planet. And we know through experimentation, we know through time, we know through countless demonstrations that what we hold in mind has a tendency to become things. Thoughts become things. Our consciousness has to demonstrate again and again and again.
Yeah, yeah. Which is itself a demonstration of the whole idea of religion, of this invisible thing having a consciousness, an understanding, and a wisdom that creates from that space of unseenness to manifestation. I.e. us.
There we are again. Okay, here's how you can tell a real religious scientist. I learned this in the last year now. All right, I've been in this philosophy close to 20 years. And just the last year, I realized this. A good religious scientist can take any word, put the word ness on the end of it, and it's still good.
Yes.
So.
And we talk about the essence of that thing. That ness is the essence of that thing.
Exactly. So, folks, what we know is you are the essence of that thing. You are the demonstration of that thing. You are an absolutely vital aspect to what's going on here on the planet. So we want to, number one, thank you for tuning in today. Again, whether you're with us live or watching this on a replay at another time, thank you so much for being with us, for being part of the New Thought Media Network. On behalf of myself and Rev Z, we'll be back again next Tuesday with a deeper exploration. We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we will by the time that day comes around. So we invite you to join us again and again and again. Before we go, Z, any final thoughts?
Hey, religious science. Approach your life as a scientist. Lab note, white coat, if you will, and start experimenting.
Yeah, right on. If there's anything in the world you're going to be religious about, make it your spirituality.
Amen.
Love you, folks. We'll see you again next time.
Peace.
Peace.